I'm trying to get down into the transom and get the wood that is sticking off the fiberglass. And at Lowe's I found what's called a drum sander. This drum sander, I attached it to a long shank that hooks up to the drill, and I'm actually able to get down in here and get the fibers of wood that are attached to the fiberglass. It's a bit messy, but it seems to be working really well. Seacast says that it will adhere to small fibers of wood, but it will not adhere to a wooden surface. It'll create a stress point and it will not chemically bond. So I'm trying to get down in here and get the wood fibers off it. I'm getting down to the fiberglass by doing this. I don't know if you can see on this side, maybe down in here, there's a bunch of wood fibers down in there that were totally coating the fiberglass, and you have to get these off for the Seacast to adhere. Let me get the light on. Maybe that's a little better. I don't know if you can see this real well. There's a bunch of wood right there in the middle. Right there is a big old piece of wood right there that is sitting right on the fiberglass, and this little drum sander is sanding all that stuff off, and it's doing really well. I got 50 grit sand drum on this. Alright, here we go. A couple days later, I'm about to glass up the holes. I like using fiberglass cloth. This stuff is really solid once you get it in there. Mix it with fiberglass resin, of course. I think it's polyester resin, don't quote me on that. Do not use any epoxies. The Seacast will not stick to them. And I actually have the transom fairly cleaned out. I've got it sanded out pretty good. And I'm about to glass up these two holes that were cut into the back of the transom. What I did was I put a board behind there, and I've got it clamped down. And I put a piece of aluminum foil between the board and the skin, the outer skin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to glass in these holes from the outside, and then when it dries I'm going to lay down another layer or two on the inside to give this really good strength. Seacast in their instructions say for the bigger holes you'll want to glass in large damaged areas like this. So this will give it rigidity, and it will hold the Seacast in. Seacast has been ordered, should be in tomorrow, and I got this weekend off. I'm going to build a cone to put on top of this thing and fill this thing up and stuff the stringers as much as I can, and then cap it off and let it cure. Here we go. Alright, we got the transom holes glassed up. I also have the stress cracks around the platforms glassed. They were developing stress cracks right in there, so I got those glassed up. Got the holes glassed up. And I also got this bottom glassed up. I had to lay in a couple pieces of fiberglass down in there right into the bottom. there was a floorboard down in the bottom. And I actually talked to the guys at Seacast today. They have great customer service, by the way. And he said to try to not let wood contact the Seacast. I have a big problem though, is inside where those stringers were. Let's see if I can get a perception here. Where the stringers were, there's still wood down in there, and there's no way I'm going to be able to get any kind of fiberglass down in there up against it. I know it's kind of hard to see, but I'm going to stuff it as much as I can down in there. I've got a bar made that I'm going to actually try to stuff it up in there. I'm going to drill holes into the stringers, just a couple of air holes inside where the bilge pump is, and as I stuff it, I'll be able to see it come out of those holes, so then I'll know that the stringers are full of Seacast, and hopefully the pressure from the motor will direct out into the stringers, and all that stuff that is packed up in there will be able to hold any kind of pressure. The stringers are my only problem, and once again, like I said, I am not taking this whole cap off to do the stringers. Just the back end of these stringers are rotten, so I don't see any use of doing that. If Seacast does what it says it's supposed to, I think we'll have a fairly solid transom. Next, I'm going to sand it and then fill it up with Seacast, and then I got to find some marine paint for the rear of this, which I'm just going to paint all gray since it's so expensive. I'm just going to actually put a gray coat inside, put it right up in here, and then just gray coat this whole area so it'll be all gray on the back. Alright, we're ready for the Seacast to come in. It should be here tomorrow. This weekend I'm going to start packing it in. Until then, I'm going to be doing some sanding. See ya. Alright, the Seacast has arrived. It is here. It showed up at my wife's work yesterday. It stunk up their whole office. So in the future, if you do order this stuff, make sure you send it to a well-ventilated place, because my wife and her office co-workers are pretty mad that it stunk up their whole office. Love you, honey. But it's here. We're going to unload this stuff, and I got something to show you with the transom, how I did it. Alright. Here we go, down into the hole, or the hall, if you wish. I'm going to try to get down in here and show you how this is. Give me a second. Okay. There's our motor mounts, the two holes. That's the transom. Hope I'm not shaking too much. There's the bilge pump down in there. That's half of it. Now this transom, of course, was plywood. And these risers that came off of the transom were also plywood. And I was going to drill some holes in it and make sure that I could fill these up with Seacast, so I can physically see the Seacast come out of them. I really feel if I can fill these up with Seacast, I will have a pretty solid transom here. Now what I did was I drilled holes in them, and here's the thing, is I thought these were solid wood, and they are not. This transom, of course, was plywood, And so are these risers. These risers are also plywood, which is attached. Let me get in here, which is attached to a 2x6 on the outside. The 2x6 is sitting outside and running down the length of the boat. So we have a 3-piece plywood transom that is built in here. Oh, sorry about this. Here's the other riser. This is a 3-piece plywood transom that was built in between two 2x6s. Now, what I did was I drilled 3 holes in these risers because I wanted to make sure that they were cleaned out, and what I found was all plywood. I thought these were all solid wood, but they are not. They were also plywood. On the outside, on my 2x6s were not, they were rotten at the ends, but the insides, you know, from about 6 inches in, they're not rotten. So I have stringers, which are solid. It's just all this plywood stuff rotted. So I'm going to fill up the risers and fill up the transom with a Seacast. It's not going to have any bond with the wood, but if I fill up everything, it should be at least enough to be able to bring the stress of the engine and the force of the engine moving forward, and I mean just the engine sitting on it. It should at least have enough strength to delegate those forces throughout the boat. Now, like I said, there's no chemical composition between wood and fiberglass, or at least this type of stuff. But my stringers are also wrapped in fiberglass. So with my stringers wrapped in fiberglass, and this was wrapped in fiberglass, and now this is going to be filled with fiberglass, I am pretty doggone sure we're going to have a structurally sound transom. Of course, time will tell when I am on the lake. There's my other holes. Another reason why I drilled these holes was so I could dig them out. And as you see, we're starting to see sunlight. That's the bottom one. And there's the second one. And of course, the top one I got totally clean. So I've got some cleaning to do here. And I'm going to totally empty out these risers on the transom risers to give it a name. Let me pull out of here and I'll show you what I mean. Because I was actually sticking a bolt in here, and I can clear it out. I can actually just totally push this stuff out of here. And I'm cleaning off the sides too. And it doesn't feel like the wood stuck to this stuff. Not like it did the inside of the transom, the back part of the transom. As you see, I'm able to push this stuff out forward and then shop back it all out. Oh, I just got a good chunk there. And I'm getting all the way to the hull. I'm actually physically getting all the way down into the hull here. And I can feel my 2x6 right here, which is fairly solid. If I can just dig everything out here, I'll be able to fill all this up with Seacast, and I think we're going to be good. Let me pull out here, and we're going to go to the top of the transom. All right, here is at the top of the transom. I'm going to look down in, and I'll show you all the dirt and stuff that I've been able to pour out of here. I guess it's not really working. There's a bunch of course, mulch that was my transom at the bottom of this. I know you can't see it, sorry. But I'm able to push all this stuff forward and empty out those stringers. And hopefully we'll be able to have a fairly solid transom after this. And it's time for a nice frosty libation.